And I understand that we will have some time for questions. Back in the back.
Dr. Paul, could you talk a little bit more about how the debasement of the currency affects the middle class and the poor in terms of what they have to their standard of living?
Why they suffer?
Yeah, why they suffer, and why your approach and your proposed approach would help those people.
It is a truism that the middle class gets wiped out when you have fiat currencies. Certainly the middle class was wiped out with the runaway inflation in Germany in the 20s. It led to political chaos. And if you look at the Central American and South American countries that have had example of constant devaluation and destruction of currency, the middle class always gets squeezed. And Mises always taught that there was a transfer of wealth. The transfer of wealth go from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy. And the reason of this is how the money comes into circulation. It doesn't come through the market. It doesn't come by somebody going out and finding gold and silver and turning it in and using that as money. It comes about by the government creating money, by the Federal Reserve creating money, and they have to inject that into the banking system. So whoever gets to use the money first has the greatest advantage. So if you have a good contract with the government, you're going to get that money pretty early. If you receive it in the banking system, banks, of course, through fractional reserve banking, they're participants in expanding the money supply. So they have this tremendous advantage. But as that money circulates after 2 or 3 years, and you don't have a precise time when people start to realize, hey, there's too many dollars out there. It might go for a while, and due to increase in production, nobody seems to care. But then eventually, prices go up. And the poor and the middle class, who may not even paying income tax, they'd be paying Social Security taxes, they might, look at what my medical bills are doing, my education bills, look at what my food bills are going, look at what my gasoline bills doing. And they get hit, and proportionally, they really get wiped out. And then they start borrowing. At the end of last year, there were over $900 billion of credit card debt because people were just struggling to pay their bills and survive. So they're indebted because they're getting hit with the inflation. And yet, even in spite of all the turmoil on Wall Street, they passed out $35 billion worth of bonuses on Wall Street. And I don't think those bonuses were a direct reflection of free market capitalism. Maybe there was a little bit, but that is a transfer of wealth, and you can see this. And that eventually leads to a lot of hostility because people start to see this unless they understand why that is the case. So sound money is really a blessing for the middle class and the poor, more so than the wealthy. The wealthy don't seem to, we get the cheers from young people and college kids, and a lot of people are just struggling when they talk about taxes and the Federal Reserve and monetary system. I don't have, the executives of big companies that come and say, oh yeah, we really like this thing. We like the Constitution, and we like these things. We don't want to we don't want anybody involved in all this warmongering stuff overseas. It's usually the middle class and the poor that seem to respond, but I think it's a very specific reason because of that.
Dr. Paul, if you were elected president, what can the president do as the executive to immediately cut federal spending? There's some arguments that half of our economy is directly and indirectly through subcontracting controlled by the federal government at this point. How can the president make an immediate change?
It's not as easy as we wished it could be, because if you're respectful of the Constitution, there's going to be a limit. I would accept the notion that although I would never use executive orders to legislate, I think it would be proper to use the executive order to cancel out bad executive orders, and you could do a little bit there. But I think the area where you have the most control over expenditures would be in the foreign policy and the military arena. Start bringing the troops out. Commander-in-Chief could say, look, the troops are going to be home in 6 months from Korea, 6 months from Japan, 6 months from Europe. And that in a way wouldn't cut off all the spending, but it would change people's mind. Oh, wow, they're serious about this, and they're going to stop the war in the Middle East, which means perceptions would change, and perceptions are important. I think it would give a boost to the dollar. I think oil prices would drop. All of a sudden, even if the military personnel were not put out of the military, and you wouldn't have to do that, but they'd be spending their money here. It would boost our economy. So it would help both realistically, but psychologically there would be a lot of help along those lines.
Dr. Paul, why is there no one else speaking about the crisis in the financial situation? They just want to ignore it. Why isn't anyone telling the American people that the Federal Reserve is a bunch of private rich bankers who create money out of nothing and then charge us interest on it?
There's a few who fully understand it, and they don't want you to know about it, so they don't talk about it. But most of the people I know in Washington don't know that much about it, and they really don't care. It seems confusing, but I don't think it's all that confusing. When I talk to 12-year-olds, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. It doesn't say a whole lot about my colleagues in Washington. But, and also it's convenient. The politician never seems, because the politician has always been reelected by passing out stuff. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and they never can vote against anything. So therefore, I'm not going to raise taxes, that's not popular. And they don't, borrowing, that looks like the national debt's going up, so they hesitate there. But for some reason, I think it's mystical. They say, the Federal Reserve, they run things like this, and they take care of it, and they haven't really looked into it. But that's what I think this campaign has done. I think we've alerted a lot of people as to what is going on. And I hope after last night, some people will pay even a little more attention, about the monetary policy.
Hey, Dr. Paul, I'm involved in a discussion right now with the Kucinich supporters, former Kucinich. They're still actually Kucinich supporters, but I'm trying to convince them to vote for you because I think that's the best anti-war choice and a whole other number of reasons. So one thing that they brought up that I don't know how to answer is they take it to the extreme. They say, okay, let's say the healthcare system is totally privatized and I have no money. What do I do at that point? And I'd love to hear what you have to say so I can relate that to you.
Of course, the criticism that of the system we have today has to be directed toward the government, because we have a government system. It's sort of a corporatism. Corporations run it, and it's been going on since '65. Johnson started that, the guns and butter. And of course, we've made it worse. Johnson started in '65, and what did Republicans do? They came on with prescription drug program. But it's non-viable. So the choice isn't the opportunities that people have now for medical care versus nothing and going back to the market. The choice is continue to do what we're doing now, and nobody's going to have anything. Because you can't work hard enough to take care of people on Social Security. Because, getting on Medicare. Medicare is in a lot worse shape than Social Security. The money's not there. So people are going to end up with no care. So the comparison should be no care or looking toward the market. But the approach I have is, in a way, even though I oppose all those programs, even Social Security, it's ironic that I think I may have the only one that is workable and work our way out of it. Because I keep arguing, the goal should never be to put the people out on the street that have become so dependent on government. And there are a few. But if we don't do something, they're all going to be out in the street. So I wouldn't be cutting, let's say, the elderly dependent on medical care from the taxpayer. So I don't bring that up. I bring up what Dennis and I talk about, all this crazy spending overseas and the war, this $1 trillion empire that we're operating, $1 trillion a year. So bringing these troops home, save hundreds of billions of dollars, take care of these people, at the same time giving you a chance to get out and buy your own. See, if you could get all your money back from taxes, and you had a savings account, medical savings account, pay for your smaller bills. See, we don't have insurance anymore. What we have is prepaid services, and what you need is a major medical policy. I mean, the odds of you needing it aren't that great at your age. So what you want is maybe a $5,000 deductible. That's not as expensive as some people believe, or a $10,000 deductible. We can live with those things and work our way out of it. So the market can handle that. But you don't have to throw people out in the street, but they will be on the street if you don't do something.